Good morning to all of you and welcome to this webinar. I'm here in the virtual room with Jean-Francois Dirks. I hope you're all well and in good health. First of all, a practical matter. You will see a question screen when you connected to GoToWebinar in which you can post your questions. Don't hesitate to do that throughout the webinar, and we'll take the questions at the end of this 1 hour webinar, or a bit less than an hour. But first, before I switch to Jean-Francois, let me first put this webinar into context. So at Agelos, we help enterprises with the data supply chain, and that includes a data part, including data replication, ingestion, data preparation, cataloging, and so on. A second part is the analytics part, where we have technologies such as Qlik Power BI, which is about reporting, visualization, to finally help you getting the insight based on the data you get out of your company or combined with external data. Today's webinar is about replication and automation. So it is in the left area, the data area. The first component that Jean-Francois will talk about is replication. This is about replicating data from your internal systems, mostly operational systems, to elsewhere. And elsewhere that can be to build, for instance, a data warehouse or to build a data analytics estate on top of which you want to do analysis or reporting. Or it can be something else as well. It doesn't have to be analytics. For instance, some banks use replication to offload data from their expensive mainframes to another system to do other kind of reporting or interactive applications. So replication is not necessarily restricted to just running dashboards or reporting on top of that, but you will see that in the presentation. And then the second component of today's webinar is about data warehouse automation. So it is working closely together with the replication. So once you've replicated the data, there is a component that helps you in automatically build the data warehouse. The products that are featured in today's webinar are Qlik Replicate and Qlik Compose. So they are the former Attunity products, which is a company that Qlik acquired last year. Now, Qlik Replicate and Qlik Compose, they are not restricted to the usage of Qlik Analytics products, such as, for instance, Qlik Sense. They can work together with Qlik Sense, but they work equally with other BI tools such as Power BI or Tableau. So this is about really replication and about data warehouse automation, irrespective of the BI tool you're using. And with that, I would like to hand over the word to Jean-Francois, who I'm going to make now a presenter. Yeah, Jean-Francois, yes, you're unmuted. So
yeah, thank you very much, Edwin. I hope you can hear me clear and loudly.
Yeah.
Good. So let's continue with this. As Edwin said, this is the last webinar of a series of 6. We will now focus on data replication and data warehouse automation on top of this replication. So this, if you're interested in the other topics, feel free, of course, to listen to the replay of the other webinars that will become available soon. Good. So let's start with one of the pictures that we used in our general webinar about data transformations and data architecture, where we mentioned that in the current situation, in the current evolution of the data market, we see that there are a lot of solutions and a lot of tools that are deployed among organizations. So you can have very small organizations that are actually just creating a few I would say a few reports in Excel on top of some data that they gather somewhere on a file server. And then you have great organizations, big organizations, where they deploy their data in multiple levels. And you see here on the picture the different levels that you can have. So you start, of course, from the original data sources, but then data can be landed in what we call a landing zone, which could be, for instance, a data lake, or a specific structured data store on a database. Then this data is moved into a staging zone where it is getting optimized, where it is restructured, where it is integrated, where also the data errors are removed. Data is cleansed, as we say, so all the data errors are removed. Then it's moved, it's added also some, it gets added some metadata. It's pushed to a data warehouse layer, which combines all the data of the organization in a very structured way, which is then on its turn is moved to data marts to serve some specific business areas like finance, like HR, and so on. And finally, it gets served on your reports, or it is used on other applications. So you see there is a lot of data movement happening around. And what we are going to talk today is actually the need of real time in this situation, because you can understand that if you have to move the data to all those different locations, well, what is going to happen is that you have to wait a lot of time before you get up-to-date data. Now, this can be fine if you want to do reporting on the past. For instance, I want to see how much I did the last quarter. But if you want to be aware about very recent data, then it can become a problem, and that's where you come to a real-time situation, real-time need. So that means you need to access this data in real time, and you want to also make sure that when you access the data in real time, you are not heavily loading your data source, because your data source usually is your ERP system, is your transactional system. It's where you actually create your invoices, or where you actually manage the service for your customers. And of course, you don't want that the service to your customer goes down because you want to report on it. So it's very important to protect this original source. And so for that, one of the solutions that you want to set up is a replication solution. So what is a replication solution? It will allow you actually to move the data from your data source into a safe place that we call a landing zone. That could be a data lake. It could be, there are all various formats. It could be in the cloud, for instance, to be completely separate from your operational systems, so that you can serve those solutions. So that's the first part. It is the replication part in real time. And that's what we're going to explain today. Now, next to that solution, of course, once that your data has been moved to a specific location, well, you want, of course, to start to make it ready to be consumed by the user. And that's where the compose comes into action. That's where you're going to transform the data in an organized way, make it in the format that you need for the actual final reporting. And as Edwin said, at the last level, the highest level, of course, you can use, for instance, a Qlik Sense interface to view your dashboard, but you could use other visualization tools like Tableau software, Power BI, or even more advanced data crunching tools. For instance, if you want to execute some artificial intelligence on top of it, or if you want to work with the data in another way. So all these things, will be covered today, but especially the focus on the replication part, because it is the base of everything. Good. So let's have a look at the data management solution that we want to propose here, which is the Qlik, which is called Qlik Qlik Replicate and Qlik Compose. So actually, what you're going to do is you're going to ensure in your data you're going to integrate the information. And you want to make sure that your data is ready for analytics. So it will cover the whole picture, as I said in the previous slide. So what we see is that this solution needs to be actually integrated in the current I would say the current trends that we see in the market, because a lot of people are investing in different technologies. And what we see is that there are some movements in that trend. For some, if we look 10 years ago, everybody was talking about relational databases, and we have to build an enterprise data warehouse on premise so that we can manage the data centrally and then distribute it to reporting. But now this is changing. So we are actually moving from the on-premise situation towards the next step, which would be cloud solutions. So more and more we have organizations that work with cloud solutions because they want to integrate with, for instance, a distribution on a mobile to their customers. They want to push the data to the internet. So it's important that the data is available in the cloud. So that's one shift that we see. And this shift, of course, means also that there is a lot of investment that is going that is done inside these cloud solutions, and of course the people that invest in cloud want to make sure they can use that in the same way that they did before when they were on premise. Also, we see that we are moving from the data warehouse towards much more data. We call that the data explosion. So that means that you cannot fit all the data that you have inside one single structured data warehouse. So we start to build up data lake, other technologies, data lakes that on their turn can be hosted in the cloud, or that can be hosted on specific environments. So because we have more and more data, we need to find different way and different advanced technologies to be able to store them. We call that big data storage capabilities. So that's also a shift that we want to support. And next to that, because we are living in a real-time world, that means also that we want to actually move from a batch approach. That means that you're going to read your database once a day or several times a day. You're going to copy all the data into a data warehouse. And once it's copied, you're going to create reports and dashboards. We're moving from this batch approach towards a streaming approach, where actually we really want to work in real time. We want to let me give you an example. If you are, for instance, a bank provider, and you want to provide a service to your customers that needs to actually access their bank accounts information, well, of course, those people don't want to see their bank accounts from last day. They want to see if the last transaction that they did in the shop 1 hour ago is already on their bank account. So there is a need for real time. And of course, if you want to provide this service in real time, you don't want your original mainframe bank system to be down because you have to deliver this service to your customers. So that's why we want to push this data towards streaming. So in order to do that, what we want, of course, is to make all these data integration investments that have been done, to make them more modern. So the modernization of everything that you set up is a very important point nowadays, because you want to make sure that you're using the right technologies. Before, maybe you were using, for instance, Oracle Warehouse Builder to load your data into a data warehouse. Now, if you have different needs, like real time, if you have needs to push to the cloud, well, it might be good to think, do I want to keep this technology that is proven and that works well in my on-premise solution? Do I want to keep that, or do I want to enlarge that with as much flexibility as possible? And that's what we propose here with the solution. When we talk about Qlik Replicate, well, it gives quite some interesting advantages. One of the things that it does is that it provides a change data capture. And actually, the technology that is behind Qlik Replicate, it was formerly called Unity, is a technology that is seen by the analysts as the leader in change data capture. So that, of course, you have the database providers like Oracle, like SAP, like whatever other provider that would provide that can do change data capture, but usually they do that within the environment in which they are sold. So Oracle change data capture will be on Oracle databases. Microsoft will be on Microsoft, and so on. And what is interesting with technology that we have here with Qlik Replicate is that it is very comprehensive. So it can access tons and tons of data sources that go from a mainframe to a more to relational databases, to the data in different structures. And it can also push that information towards a lot of targets that are also very open. So you can push it, of course, to different BI tools, to data science tools. It really allows you to have a full end-to-end data push towards the technology that you have chosen. So you are really very open in that aspect. And then, of course, you also have the fact that cloud is becoming very important, and there are actually 3 major cloud providers that we find in the market. There might be some more, but the 3 major ones, which are Amazon, Microsoft Azure, and Google, are actually 3 big cloud providers. And in fact, well, what we see is that the Qlik replicate technology has been embedded within 2 of those 3 cloud providers as a standard way to move data into the cloud. So actually, they have chosen Qlik replicate technology to be the engine to move your data from all the different data sources towards their cloud environments. And that's why we can say that Qlik replicate is really used, has already been used to move more than 300,000 databases and mainframe data into those cloud systems, because it is the standard tool that is used by those cloud systems embedded. Not all of 3, but 2 of them have chosen that as an embedded technology. So important is the positioning in cloud. And then, of course, another very important point in the technology that we're going to present today is that it is a technology that is easy to use. Now, of course, everyone says that about this product. Now, we have actually looked into the market, into all the different products, and I must say that the interface that you will see are actually really easy to use, in the sense that they are developed to make your life easy, and also to guide you throughout the whole process of data movement. Of course, you can have a lot of advanced tools in which you can do a lot of programming and coding, but here a lot of things is made more easy. It will become clear also in the demonstration that we'll do in a minute. So these are really the things that we want to put forward in the solution that we propose here in the market of modernization and automation of data integration. Good. Then to continue on the actual content that you have behind the solution that we propose. The first step, of course, is that what you will see here, and I think it's the main requirement that the solution answers, is really the real-time approach. We do things in real time. The system is going to get the data, and it will do it in a very smart way, in the sense that it can access the data without loading the system. So it's doing a lot of log-based change data capture. So what is log-based change data capture? It means that it actually does not connect directly to the operational database behind, but it's actually connected to the database log. What is the database log? It's a place where every time that you commit something, every time that you change something in a field, that you update a row, that you add a row or insert or things like that, every time you do that, well, actually behind something gets written in the log, and the system here is capturing whatever gets written in the log and automatically mimics the same change in your target database or data store, because it can be a data lake also. And by doing that, it allows you really to have a real-time replication of your original source. What you have done also is that it is very heterogeneous, in the sense that you can push towards the cloud, you can push towards a database, a data lake, you can even push towards a data stream, so that you can add data into specific applications. It is completely automated, so you just have to set up the system and click run, and then everything is going to happen automatically. The automation is both on the replication part, but also on the creation of the data warehouse. We will show that in the demonstration. And also, and that I think that's an important point, because the technology has been proven and adopted by the major cloud providers, but also by a lot of other customers. We have more than 2,500 customers that are actually using that technology. Well, that means that it is, of course, also a technology that is scalable and that is proven to be very, very stable. It's one of the important points also that you have there. Good. Maybe a few details on the specific modernization aspects that I have discussed before. One of them is actually when we talk about cloud application development. Well, this is one of the things that you really want to do with modernization. Before, if you want to access data, you had to be connected through VPN to a system and access the data to a query tool and get the data in a report. Now, more and more, we see that companies want to deploy microservices. What are microservices? Well, it is like the example I said before. I am a banking provider, and I want to push to my end users, to my customers, a banking application that actually shows data that comes from my mainframe system. So that banking application is a microservice. Usually those microservices are developed in web tools that are hosted in the cloud, because they need to be reliable to work on the web. So they are completely cloud-based. Of course, if you have a completely cloud-based solution that needs to access data that is in your mainframe, well, you don't want this cloud-based solution. Each microservice, each customer that connects to the banking application, you don't want them to actually access your mainframe. So what you're going to do is you're going to push this data out of your system and make them available also in the cloud. And of course, for this to work, it needs to be real time. I don't want to see my banking accounts details for until yesterday. I want to see it until now. It's very important. And in many applications, it becomes very important to be real time. So that's one first step. It's really to allow this cloud application development to be possible. You need to have your data in the cloud. Another point, of course, is that when you deploy a data warehouse, well, a data warehouse can be stored in different ways. Of course, you have those classical warehouse environments like an Oracle data warehouse or a Microsoft on-premise data warehouse, or even a DB2 that are Teradata that are set up on-premise. But now we more and more move to more advanced technologies like Amazon Redshift, like Snowflake, like Azure Synapse, like Google BigQuery. All these data warehousing solutions are hosted in the cloud as a service. And again, you want to be able to push the data to those data warehouse solutions. So the modernization goes also from one single on-premise type of data warehouse towards a more open solution. And again, we want to be able to push in real time this data towards those kind of environments. And lastly, also next to the data warehouse solutions where you actually store the data and then access the data using different applications, there are also other types of needs next to data warehouse. It could be data lakes. If you want to push your data towards a data lake. Typically, a data lake has a different type of storage, because when you store data in a data lake, you don't store it into tables with restrictions. You don't apply, for instance, primary keys and foreign keys and all these things. Usually in data lakes, you have storage that are in text files that are not specifically indexed and that have all different type of formats. And when you do that, of course, it's very, very difficult to do real time, because if something changes in your original source, well, if you want to change the final unstructured file in your data lake, well, you need to just delete it and recreate it completely to have something that actually mimics what you had before. So it's very difficult to do. It requires a lot of skills. Also, you need to do a lot of programming in Python or MapReduce or Spark. So all these things make it very complex to maintain a data lake, or even to push data towards streams, data streams like Kafka streams. So what we have here is we have a solution that can also push all this data no matter what the target is. So you could push your data and replicate it and push it towards, at one side, your data warehouse that is hosted in an Amazon Redshift, and next to that to a Snowflake solution, and next to that also push it towards a Kafka stream that will push the data into another application. So all of this can be managed with the solution we propose here. Good. More into detail, what is inside the solution. So what you have inside the solution is a solution that is going to access, on the left you see all the different data sources that you can talk with. So it could be relational data warehouses, it could be of course also flat files, but also specific mainframes, softwares in the clouds, or specific application. Also SAP, there are very good connectivity with SAP to make it real-time replication of data you have inside SAP. And it's going to generate all those data streams and move them, deliver them to the final targets. Now, while it is delivering that, of course, you can do something with the data. You can refine your data. You can make it more easy to use for reporting. You can obfuscate some data that is sensitive and that you don't want to be distributed, like names, like social security numbers, all these things. So you can do that, all this on the fly while moving your data. And the first use case, of course, is to move it to a streaming system, so that you just push your data towards another system that is going to stream it further, like Kafka Stream or cloud solutions, and they're going to be pushed towards change data capture streaming applications. Another way is that you actually build a model on top of that. Once that you have just make a direct copy of your data, once it is committed, it gets pushed towards either the database or a streaming solution. Well, what you can do is you can build a model, a data warehouse model. And this data warehouse model, again, can be hosted in Snowflake, in Oracle, in Amazon Redshift, in SQL Server, BigQuery, Google, whatever you want. Once you have your model, you can actually generate automatically this data. But another point is that you might want also to conform your data so that it can be it has the right format to be stored into a data lake. As I said before, a data lake is not the same as a relational database, so it becomes very, very difficult and complex to push that towards the data lake. Well, again, here is just a one-stop shop, and you push it wherever you want. That's the solution we propose here. Of course, once you have your data that is stored there, what you want is you want to make sure that this data can become understandable for the business user. So you're going to build a catalog. The catalog part that you see there is actually the technology that we have explained in our previous in our session of last Thursday, which was about Qlik Data Catalyst, which is now called Qlik Catalog. But it's the same thing, Qlik Catalog and Qlik Data Catalyst. So this solution is also directly integrated within the approach that we have here, so that you can actually allow self-service distribution of data. So on top of that, once you have put all this data ready, well, you can deploy whatever solution you want. It could be a Tableau, a Power BI, or Qlik front end. It could be pushing towards more advanced artificial intelligence tools or machine learning tools like data robots. You can also, of course, push it to data science tools like SAS or IBM SPSS. So you see, you have a lot of capabilities, of course, to consume your data later on. When I say there are a lot of technologies that are supported, it is really a lot. So you have a lot of sources. Usually when you have an end-to-end solution that is proposed by a specific vendor on the market, he will say, well, of course we support end-to-end, but only on our database technology and only for a specific set of data targets and so on. What you have here is really, and I think that's the strength of the solution that we propose here. It is that you can actually get data from all the different sources, be it a database, a data warehouse, a mainframe, be it cloud solutions, real SAP data, or cloud solutions like Salesforce, and you want to push them also to all the supported technologies like Redshift, Snowflake, Hortonworks, data lakes, whatever you want. you will be able to support it. You can even push it towards SAP HANA if you want to get it back to SAP. So you see, you have a lot of capabilities on that side. So that's really the important thing, is that you can actually push that towards the solution that you want. Good. So in a nutshell, things that I've shown before I move to the demonstration, you see that you have a solution that will bring the data in any type of data source. You can, of course, it's actually doing this in real time. It can support clouds. It can support streaming of your data changes, moving it towards streaming applications. The SAP connectivity is also a very strong one. We have there are a lot of organizations that also uses this technology just to move their data from SAP towards another SAP environment, or towards a testing environment, or even towards, they are replicating it towards the cloud, so that they can use application on top of it. So there are really a lot of capabilities that are made possible in that. What is important is that whatever investment you made in specific technologies in the data source side or on the data target side, it will be actually one step that will make it possible to move it from one direction to the other by leveraging the investment that you already did. That's the important point that you have here. Good. Let me move now to demonstration. I think that it's important that we want to that you see the solution in action. So I will first start to demonstrate the replication part, and move later on to demonstrate also the data warehousing part. So let's first start with the replication part. So I will move now on the screen the interface that we want for the demonstration. Let me just take it here on my screen. There we are. So we start with a web interface. We call it Replicate Web Console. And within this interface, what you're going to do is, we are going to connect to a specific data source and push it towards a target. So we will start here. So if you look at the end, what we call an endpoint, you will see that you have specific data sources, like for instance, the Oracle one. If I create a new one, you will see that you have a lot of different data sources that you can support, be it SAP solutions, Oracle, IBM, Amazon, and so on. So here, what we will do is we will start with an Oracle source, and on the target side, you will see also that you will have a lot of targets that are possible, like for instance, pushing towards an Amazon SQL Server on Amazon, or IBM DB2 or Postgres, or you can even also push it towards data lakes. So we will start with an example here where I'm going to move my data that is in my Oracle database. So the Oracle database, it's one endpoint, and I'm going to move it towards a SQL Server data warehouse. So let's create a new task. Move data from Oracle to SQL Server. There we go. And you see that you can do several things. You can load the data directly, and then you can automatically apply and store the changes. So you can actually choose, okay, I want to have a direct replication of my system when it gets changed. So that's the real-time replication. But I want to keep the history of those changes. But it could be that your original source does not keep the history. Well, by checking this, you will make sure that you don't lose any history that you had before. So let me select that. It can work also in different directions, but let's now do it just unidirectional. And all I need to do now is I need to specify from where to where I want to move my data. So let's say that I want to move this data from my Oracle data source towards my data warehouse target here that is defined in SQL Server. Now, what is defined in SQL Server is a data warehouse target, which is a database. If you look here at the data warehouse target to which I want to push it, it is called the HR replication. So it's a database that does not contain any tables. So you see, it's completely empty except for system tables. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move this solution from, sorry, it's not the data warehouse target, it's the HR replication that I chose. So let me take the red one. So instead of using this one, I will take the replication one, the HR replication, which maps directly to the database that I have shown here, the HR replication. So this is all we need to do to define how the data is going to be moved. Now, of course, what is important is that I can actually select what I want to move. So I click here on table selections, and here actually you can search to see what data you have in the underlying database. So you see that you have different data. If you select a specific schema, for instance, we take the HR schema, and I want to see what is in the HR schema, it will show me all the tables that are here. Now I can actually physically take those tables and move them there, saying that it needs to copy those specific tables. But what I can also do is I can also tell the system, take any table. By doing that, and that's where you get a big difference between traditional ETL tools. In traditional ETL tools, you actually tell the system, take that table, take those fields, move that there. And if something changes in the source, you have to adapt the ETL flows, because otherwise you will get an error. Here, you can just say to the system, just make sure that your target is the same as your source. So if something changes in the source, it will also change in the target. So I've selected now all the different tables. So that means they are now available. And of course, I can do some small modifications there. So one of the things you can do, for instance, is that you can look at the employee table. So let me quickly look at the employee table, and I can actually filter on this table only to load some specific rows, or I can change some stuff here inside this table. For instance, here we have the first and last name. If I want to create a new record, for instance, so that we want to add an additional field, what we can do is we can add a column. We call that full name, like this. Okay. And in this column, I will take the first name that we're going to concatenate. So we take here the concatenation with a space, and that we concatenate with the last name. So we will have the full name. I can actually parse to see if it works. If this guy is called John Doe, what does it give? It gives John Doe. Okay, it works. It seems to be okay. So I can actually add this field now. Now this field will be added in my target database while it is not in the source. What I can also do is, if I see here my email address, well, actually, I don't really want this email address to be visible by my target users. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a function. For instance, here you have a lot of function you can use, but let's take here the hash function. What does the hash function? It actually obfuscates the content. So if I take a hash of my email, and if I tell the system here my at mail.com, so I create an email address. If I test this, it will generate a hash string, but this hash string will always be the same. So if I have a different email address and I test it, you'll see that this changes. But if I go back to my original email address, you will have exactly the same hash 2F7. If I change it, you will see here, if I change something, it's different. If I go back to the original one, you see that you get back those 2F7. So that means you keep consistency while actually obfuscating your data. So this is a few of the things you can do. There are a lot of more, of course, but we did some changes. Now what we want to do is we want to actually generate this replication. So you can do that by executing it. So I click on run, and when I click on run, it will actually execute this. So it means it's going to go to the database, start to see if there are changes, and will mirror those changes into my target. And you have actually a dashboard to see what is going to happen inside your data source. So it's going to actually loading the data. It's going to move the data towards, something is wrong here, but this is because it is a real-time demo, real live demo. So let me let me go back and to the designer and see what is happening. So I will run this. Yes. Okay. It's starting up the data, but something is wrong. So this proves that this is a real life demo, but no panic. I must probably have done something wrong in the definition. No problem. Let me show you another one that I'm sure is running. It's exactly the same as the one I've just created for you. So I don't know what is wrong here. So we're going to actually start this task, because this is what I wanted to show you. So here you have actually a dashboard in which it's going to show you what is actually changing here in the data. So it's loading the data and it's showing you through processing whatever thing is changing. So let me show you exactly what happens when you apply changes. For instance, here I'm going to insert some data in the database, and I'm going to increase the salary of a few of the employees. I'm going to update a few regions. I'm going to even add a column to the region table. I'm going to, for instance, create a new table, a contractor table. And you see that when you do that, the table appears here in the database. So all the changes that I'm applying are getting actually applied here on your final database in real time. And actually, if you go now to the resulting data warehouse, of course, I ran another one which was pushing it here towards data warehouse. But what you will see here is that it's creating tables, like you see here. You have employee tables and job tables, but you also have the change tables. What are the change tables? Well, actually, if I look at my, for instance, if I look at my employee table and I look here at the top row of my employee table, what you see here is that you have the actual salary, which is a value that is currently the same as the one that you have in the original data source. But as I have explained before, I did an increase of salary here. So it's a little tool that allows me to modify my data. And by increasing the salary, something has changed in this field. Now, if I go to the change table of the employees, so if I look here at the top rows of the change table of the employees, what I see here is that we have all the changes that are actually recording before and after the update. And each time you see that, for instance, the salary was 24,000 and moved to 24,001. This salary was 17,000 and moved to 17,001. And you have all the history of change that is kept inside those tables. So this allows you in reporting to roll back to previous situation if you need that. So you see what you have here in the system. You have a dashboard where you can in real time move your data from one place to another. Good. That was about the replicates part. Now let's move also to the compose part. The compose part will actually start from that point. So actually you can have as a source database a data that has been replicated from an original source. That's what we have here. And we're going to push that towards another data store that is here called data warehouse demo. So again, I created a new data. This was just my replicated database. If I go here to my demo database, again, I have a system that is completely empty. There are no tables here inside this database. And what we're going to do now is we're going to build a data mart that will be pushed towards this data store, but coming from my replicated data source here. And if you look at the replicated data source, you can actually see that in this definition, you can actually directly point to a replicated database, and you can specify the replicate server setting so that it's directly integrated with it, and you can still, for instance, take your metadata that comes from your original source. So this is how you directly integrate this compose solution with the replicate front end that we saw before. So we start with a replicated database, and we want to make this a data warehouse. Now, again, a big difference with traditional ETL tools that you have here is that this solution is completely model driven. What does that mean, that it's model driven? It means that actually you have to start to think of a model before you can move the data. In traditional ETL tools, you just take the data, you push it towards the next level, and then, well, actually this leads towards a model. Here, if you go the other way around, you start with a model. And there are several ways that you can actually build this model. If I click here on on this link. Of course, I can create a model step by step. If I click on Manage Model, I can start to create entities. And in these entities, you have attributes. And then in these attributes, you have also some specific indicators. So you're going to build up the model from scratch. What you can also do is you can actually try to discover the model based on the data that is available in the source. So the system will help you to find out what is there. Or you can import the model from a modeling tool. For instance, if you have Irwin, if you have created a model in Irwin, you can just automatically import it, the model here. What we will do here is we're going to discover the model. So I click on Discover. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to search what I find in my source. So it's going to look into the source and it will find a set of tables there. So let's take all the tables that it finds here in the source. Okay, these are the tables that were found here in my business sales source. I click on OK, and actually it is automatically generating a model based on what it finds on the source. So what did it do now? It actually created a model based on the tables, and it found relationships between the tables because they were already defined in the data. And it's published a complete model here, in which, for instance, in the model I have order details. If I see here, I have, for instance, some specific numbers for order details. If I go in my employees table, I will find some other fields that are directly available in the employees table. So you see, this has been created automatically based on the data. Now, what is important, if you take, for instance, the employee table, is that it has also automatically taken care of the history. History typically is managed in the model using slow changing dimension types. So you have slow changing dimension type 1, means, for instance, I have a birth date that is in my system, and actually the birth date is wrong. So I put 1st January 1901 because I didn't know the birth date of the person. Now I modify this birth date. I want, of course, this birth date to be replicated and to be pushed towards my data warehouse at the end. Now, of course, I don't want to keep the history of the birth date. It doesn't make sense. You don't change birth date over time. So you can change this into type 1. By making this type 1, what is happening behind is that you have a complete data model behind. It is called the hub in this case, or it is called different satellite tables. For instance, here I need some satellite tables to manage slow changing dimensions. That's why you have satellite tables here. But for this one, I don't have any satellite tables. So I just want to keep the birth date as is. Okay, so that's what you have here. You can specify that in your model. And once you have your model, you can check that your model is okay by clicking on the validate. So it checks and it sees, well, the model you've created is correct. No issues, there is nothing missing. So you can go further with it. So now I'm ready with my model. I will move now towards the data warehouse creation. So we are ready to build a data warehouse. So to build a data warehouse, what we do is we actually create the data warehouse by clicking the create button. So it's automatically generating what I need for my data warehouse. What does it need behind? Actually, it needs a lot of it creates a lot of instructions to build your data warehouse, and then that's the initial load, and then actually to process the changes. So automatically it generates also the change processing, the change data capture once the initial loads have been done. So I have my original source. If something is going to change in my original source, the CDC instructions will actually push those changes all the way down to the data mart. Good. I have those two different set of rules. And then, of course, once I have created this, you see that I'm only halfway. The reason is because, well, actually, I might want to apply some changes or to actually generate those tables physically. Here is just created some of the steps to create your data warehouse. Now, let's say, for instance, that I want to see here, for instance, let's display the data warehouse. Here you have all the data, and I have in my business sales, for instance, I have my employee table. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to look at how my employee table gets mapped. You see that it gets mapped in these different things. If I go to my order table, I see how it gets mapped. You see that all the orders are mapped towards the different fields. And if you go to order details, you see here that you have quantity and unit price. And actually, I would like now to add a field that calculates the price automatically, which would be the quantity times the unit price. It's not there in my, and also taking care of the discount to have a full revenue. So to be able to do that, I would like to add here a field. Now you see here, we are in the data warehouse. And because the system is model driven, well, what we want, of course, is to make sure that this is defined in the model. If I want to have my full sales numbers that are defined in the model, I need to go back to the model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going back to the model, and in the model here, we're going to manage the model, and you'll see that inside the model, you have this order details attribute. You have only a quantity and a unit price attribute. So let's add a new attribute that we will call, we will take that from the unit price domain. So it's decimal numbers. We call that revenue, for instance here. This will be the full revenue. And this revenue, of course, we don't want to keep the history out of that because it's a number. And we want to just to create that as an attribute. I don't define any definition there. It's just that I want to know that there is a a revenue field that is available here in that order details table. Now that I've added this attribute, if now I'm going to validate the model, this will still work. But if I'm now going to validate my warehouse here, it will say that there is a difference. Of course, because we've just added an attribute. So you can look into more details and it will tell you, oh, I found out that there has been a field added revenue inside your order details. Okay, very well. Now I can generate a script and send it to a DBA so that he does the change, or I can automatically adjust my warehouse script so that now I have the data automatically also pushed towards my warehouse. Now that I have this, if I manage now the system and I go to the order details, you will see now that you have the revenue field that is available now. And once that you have this revenue field available, in the same way as we did before with the replicate, you can start to build expressions here. For instance, I want to have the quantity multiplied by the unit price multiplied by 1 minus the discount. Of course, we want to put brackets into that. So do like this. I want to parse this expression. So if I have a quantity of 12 that costs 5 euro and I have a 0.1 discount, what do we get as a result? Oh, sorry. What do we get as a result? 54. And actually, I can preview it with the data that is inside. So now I see indeed that the additional field is applying so the expression value for revenue, and I can check if this is correct. So okay, this is fine. Okay, so now you see that it has automatically found out that it is mapping the data out of those 3 fields towards the revenue field. So I've created a new field there that should be available. So now I am ready to actually generate all this. Now that I've created all this, what I can do is I can generate the tables that are behind. So it will automatically generate the tables that are behind. Okay, and I can start to run this flow. And when running this flow, what is going to happen behind is that it's going to execute all the processes. And you see that while it's running, I can see what are the processes that gets running. I can see, well, you see, it's dropping a table, it's creating a table, it's loading a table, and all these things. So you will find all those 1,300 actually steps that, to build up the data warehouse. Imagine that you have to do that by hand. Of course, here it's done completely automatic. And once it has been executed, you can start to analyze what is happening. Another thing that you can do, of course, once we did that, you will see that in the demo data warehouse, if I refresh this, you will see now that, so let me refresh the database. There we go. You will see now that it has generated all the tables you need for your data warehouse. Now, what you can do also, once when you, if we go back to the, so you see now the data warehouse has been filled. If what I can do also, if I look at, for instance, my my order information, and I would like now, for instance, to ensure the data quality. So one of the things I can do is I can start to generate. Of course, this was a very simple ETL. But you can create your own ETL processes with accessing ETL on a single table or combining multiple tables. This was just an example. So you can really do a lot of things there. It's not because it's made easy that you cannot do complex things. But one of the things also that we have done here is that we can also actually profile our data. So if we go back to the order details that we had here, and I would like to see what data is behind here, I have a data profiler that is going to let me analyze what I have as a data. For instance, here I have a unit price that go from 2 to 99, and actually I would like to see what are the fields that that have this high level. So you can really dig into the data and see what is behind. What you can also do is you can say I want to create a data quality rule to ensure that my data is always correct. So let's create, for instance, a validation rule that says I want to create a validation rule here, and we will call that validation rule that I want to check. So I call this minimum order check. So I want to make sure that there are at least 5 items that are ordered. So what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to make sure that the quantity is bigger than 5, like this. Okay, so I added a rule there. By adding the rule, I can, of course, once I have created this rule, I can describe this is the min order check. Okay, there we are. And also one of the things that you find in these data quality rules is that you can decide I want still to load this, but I want to report this. So if we do this and we load the data, in that case you will directly see that you will have a direct view. So if we I finish this definition here. Okay, it's going to generate the data again, and I want to run the data once again now, but applying the quality rule. What you will have is that once that your quality rule has applied, you find that there were some rules that were reported. So 237 rules were actually not the same. Were actually not complying to the quality check that I've sent. So you see, you can do a lot of things. Once I've built this warehouse, I can move towards the last step, which is actually building a data mart. So the last step, building a data mart, you can create different types of data structure. We don't have the time here to go into detail, but if we just take a transactional data mart and we want to actually define information about the order details, so let's create that. It will automatically select all the tables that are linked towards my order table. So like take my customer and employee table. I click on next. I want to apply my data mart based on the order date. And when I click finished, it's generated automatically a data mart schema. Now, what is behind this data mart schema is that that's where you get to the final step. Once this data mart has been created, it's actually automatically generating a schema, a data mart schema. One of the things you can do within this this solution. So now we created the schema. Of course, what we can do now is we can execute this schema. So we will going to create the data mart tables and actually generate the schema that is behind, and run, of course, so that it gets filled. So if we go back now towards the solution here, you will see now that he has created some specific data mart tables. So these are called here the TDMA tables. So I have created the data mart with 1 fact table and 2 dimension tables. And this has been generated again automatically by the system. because it is generated automatically, I can have a look into it. For instance, here, if we look at the revenue and we look at the revenue from within the order tables, for instance, by company name, and we take also from the products the products, for instance, here, let's take the supplier ID, for instance. Oh no, let's take the category name. That's more interesting. Okay, and now I can start to check my data. For instance, here, if I want to see my sum of revenue based on company name and based on category name, I can start to analyze the data. So this is a quick way to sanity check your data straight here from the interface. Now, of course, if you want to push this towards a reporting solution and create a report on top of that, well, actually, you can use, for instance, Qlik Sense, or you can use other front-end tools like Tableau. And actually, what will happen is that Qlik Sense will automatically detect. Here, of course, I generated the Qlik Sense directly on this database, and it proposed a lot of visualization. And behind, of course, what you have is you have, if you look there, you have the different tables and the different data model that is generated automatically. So just by having Qlik Sense look into the data, you can get a complete insight in your data. So you see, you have a complete end-to-end solution, and we're running out of time, so I will close this demonstration now. But that's really what you see here is we replicated the data. So to wrap up, I'll move quickly to a wrap-up slide. To wrap up, what we have built today is a solution in which we have a complete end-to-end analytics. Maybe I'll use another wrap-up slide that is what I used in the beginning of my presentation. So we showed you the Attunity solution that was automatically replicating the data into a landing zone. And then we have shown you the Compose solution that was actually pushing this data all the way down to the data mart. You see, you have the different levels, the data warehouse and the data mart, to be consumed at the end by any front-end tool. And this ends this presentation. We're a bit out of time, but maybe there are one or two questions we can tackle. Did you get some question, Edwin?
Yeah, Jean-Francois, we have just time for one, because we are well over time, but one question that popped up several times. So several people are asking, it seems that time extender and Compose, so Attunity Compose or Qlik Compose, seem to be alternative tools. So is that the case? And if so, what are the criteria to choose for the one or the other?
Yes, that's a very good question indeed. We showed you Time Extender last Tuesday. Time Extender is really an easy tool to gain a lot of time to automate your data warehouse part. So that's a very good solution if you want to move your data into a data warehouse in SQL Server. And you don't have that need of replication, of real-time replication, or that need to push it towards data lakes or things like that. So it's a very end-to-end solution and quick solution to gain a lot of time. While here, the solution that we proposed here, it's a solution where you can answer this real-time access needs. So that's really the key if you want to start with these solutions is, do I need a real-time? And it will also help you then to, for instance, push towards the cloud, to push towards data lake, to push towards streaming solutions. So it's much broader on the way you're going to distribute your data. So if you have this need for, as we explained in the beginning with the banking application, where I want to push my data towards customer applications without loading my data source, and I want to do this in real time, that's the solution use case you want to do. Or if you want to move your SAP data towards the cloud and combine it with a lot of other data, this will be the right solution. Time Extender will be more for building really a data warehouse in batch.
Okay, thank you, Jean-Francois. We are really running out of time. Thank you all for your participation. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to send them to us. And for the other webinars, we've already published them on demand on our website. So go to the events page, and there you will find a link for each and every of the webinars that we've conducting. So thank you all for your attention, and have a good day and stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.